This video was made possible by EA Game Changers. Hey guys, how you going? This is BillyEatWorld again, and today we're going to take a look at an often overlooked period in World War II history, the Norwegian campaign of 1940. And in particular, we're going to cover a brief history of the Battle of Narvik, which, as you guys probably know by now, is one of the brand new locations we're going to be fighting in Battlefield 5. Like I said, the Norwegian campaign is often overlooked for reasons we'll talk about later on, but nevertheless was a key strategic piece in the puzzle for both sides. So the question is, what is the Battle of Narvik and why was it so important? Well, stay tuned, because that's what we're going to find out right now. So to kick off, just to clarify, the Battle of Narvik wasn't actually one battle at all. It was actually two naval engagements and then a land battle that lasted for around 2 months. And as their names clearly indicate, they all took place in and around the harbour town of Narvik, which is located on the northwest coast of Norway. Narvik was strategically important for both the Allies and the Germans because it was an ice-free harbour that was used to export iron ore mined in northern Sweden. And not just that, the Germans knew that controlling Norwegian ports would give their U-boats much easier access to the Atlantic Ocean to strike at Allied shipping. Even though Norway was a neutral country, both the Germans and the British had plans to violate this neutrality, going back to the Russo-Finnish War of late 1939. But in the end, it was actually the Germans who made the first move, invading the country on the 9th of April 1940 in one of the first combined arms operations of the war. They dispatched a force of 10 destroyers to capture Narvik, each with a crew of about 300 sailors and 200 elite Austrian mountain troops. And apart from a fairly limited skirmish with 2 old Norwegian coastal defence ships, the Germans were able to pretty much land in Narvik unopposed, capturing the town on the same day as the invasion. On learning of the German invasion, the British and other Allied forces were quick to launch a counter-offensive, dispatching a naval battle group to Narvik pretty much straight away. And compared to the German flotilla already in the area, it was a formidable force of destroyers led by the battleship Warspite and supported by the aircraft carrier Furious. Before the larger ships could be brought to bear though, a smaller flotilla of 5 British destroyers took the opportunity on the 10th of April to surprise the Germans in port, which came to be known as the First Battle of Narvik. And in this skirmish, even though they were outnumbered 2-1, the British managed to destroy 2 German ships and seriously damaged 4 others for the loss of only 2 of their own. Once the Warspite had reached Narvik though, the naval engagement had basically already been decided, because not only were the Germans low on fuel and ammunition, they were also outgunned. Because with the Warspite's 15-inch main guns, it can engage and destroy the German destroyers well beyond the range they could effectively fight back, and therefore they didn't really stand a chance. When the Second Battle of Narvik had finally ended though, the British had managed to destroy or force the Germans to scuttle all 8 remaining destroyers as well as a U-boat for the loss of only 2 of their own. But with that being said, although they had decisively won the battle on the sea, over 2,500 German sailors did survive and made it to shore to fight the British another day in the land battle which was soon to come. Now, it's an interesting point to note that the German High Command did expect that their Navy and Air Force would do most of the work in Norway, and so only really deployed mainly reservists to fight in the invasion. But with that being said, the Austrian mountain troops I mentioned earlier that were sent to Narvik were definitely not cut from the same cloth and were a seriously well-trained fighting force. On the other hand though, the British and Allied reactionary force were far less capable and sometimes woefully underprepared for fighting in the icy terrain around Narvik. And not just that, although the British did have support from naval guns out to sea, the Germans pretty much had control of the air for most of the battle and were able to harass the British ships and ground forces with relentless air attacks. The Austrians were also trained to set up and fight from higher altitudes, and so although massively outnumbered, they managed to stubbornly hold out. And although they did eventually lose control of the town itself, they retreated to the north and set up defensive positions that the British just couldn't crack. In the final few weeks of the battle, they were eventually reinforced by about 1,000 Fallschirmjäger paratroopers, but even so, by this time the Allies outnumbered them by about 5-1. And as well as the British forces, this included forces from the Norwegian army, Alpine troops from France, 2 battalions of the French Foreign Legion, and even 15 Polish Hotchkiss tanks. Now, technically by this point, the Allies had already won the battle on the ground and were in the process of mopping up the remaining German resistance when other events forced them to withdraw. Because as it turns out, not too far to the south, while the Battle of Narvik was raging, Hitler's blitzkrieg had broken through Allied defences and smashed into France and the Low Countries. Just to give you a bit of perspective, the British evacuation in Dunkirk, for example, was happening at the end of May, barely a week or two before the end of the Battle of Narvik. And so with this, the French were in complete disarray and the British were forced to relinquish all their positions along the Norwegian coastline, leaving the Germans free to occupy the entire country. By the 10th of June, all conventional resistance to the German invasion of Norway had ended, and so the country would remain in German control until 1945. An organised pro-government Norwegian armed resistance movement did survive though, and went on to fight against the German occupation throughout the war. They were instrumental in the destruction of a number of important German naval ships, including the infamous battleships Bismarck and Tirpitz. But as for Narvik itself, well, that's where the story ends, because as it was never recaptured, it remained a thorn in the side of Allied forces, and just as they expected, became a major German U-boat base for the rest of the war. But anyway guys, that just about wraps up this quick history of the Battle of Narvik, so make sure you let me know what you think in the comment section below. Also, let me know what other famous World War II battles you'd like to see in Battlefield 5, or other war stories you'd like to see me feature on this channel. As always though, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and please feel free to check out the links in the description below if you want to see any more of my videos. And don't forget, you can also find my Twitter and Discord links down there as well if you want to keep in touch with me. And as always, until next time, see you later and have a good one.